Welcome into Northside Territory, presented by Fox One, Foul Territory Network's Cubs podcast. I'm Sahadev Sharma with my partner Patrick Mooney. We are your Cubs beat writers over at The Athletic. Patrick, I did not make it all 18 innings last night, so I got a decent amount of sleep. I tried to make it. I woke up at 3 a.m. and checked my phone because the TV was still on, and that game was epic. Pretty fun. World Series Game 3. It's been a fun World Series so far. I got to be honest. I thought the Dodgers were just too hot, and it wasn't going to be as competitive as it is. But that's why it's fun. That's why baseball is so fun. It's so hard to predict. But we'll get to Cubs stuff right now. This episode is some names that the Cubs may pursue position player wise. We did pitchers already. I think that's probably. I think we both agree that pitching is the focus. But there are names that they could go after. It's hard for us to really say how hard they're going to go after some of these players at this point in time. But the first one that you and I both agree that they're going to be. What's the easiest way to put this? Kicking the tires on him.
Yes. Yes.
Just like last year, Alex Bregman. I feel like you spent your entire first stint of spring training writing Alex Bregman stories. Hopefully that's not the case again this year.
Yeah, I think it might have been like 10 or 11 straight days of Alex Bregman headlines. There may have been like an off day built in there where I wrote something else, but that was the saga. It seems like the Cubs, more than other teams, get wrapped up in these dramatic sweepstakes that go down towards the end of the offseason and spill into spring training and sometimes even around the start of Cactus League games. And based on our reporting from that time, it's really hard to rule out the idea of them trying again. That doesn't mean I would put them as like the number one favorite or that they're going to change their spending habits or patterns, but their projections were very robust for Bregman, even going out years into the future. And I don't think his very good year with the Red Sox would have fundamentally changed that. Obviously, Matt Shaw had a nice second half and sort of blew everyone away with his defense, but you saw in the playoffs it was a struggle for him, and I know that young players can get better, and Jed Hoyer likes to call him, the lifeblood of an organization. But there's really kind of one spot. We're kind of working under an assumption here of how we see the roster at this point. There's kind of one spot where you could probably go to upgrade, and it's a guy that not only can move around to different positions even deeper into his career, he also just brings a ton of like baseball knowledge and experience, and I think would really fit in well with a group that is kind of a bunch of baseball gym rats.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. The clubhouse fit is ideal.
Yeah,
I think he'd fit in really well with this group. Especially the position players really seem to bond and love to talk baseball and talk hitting. Do you spend that much money on a 31-year-old? That's going to be the question asked in that front office, and by us, I guess, and fans. You have a guy that I think they believe in at third base, that has a ton of potential to grow. But it was the opportunity missed, I guess. Was it the right time to make that push a year ago and not now? Now, what type of deal is he going to get? There are two questions that aren't directly related to Bregman. One, I should say, one big question that's not directly related to Bregman, but it kind of ties into it. That's been kind of like going around in my head for the past few days as I think of what I want to write and what I want to attack this offseason. What type of team are the Cubs during these winters? Like, have we established what they are? are they permanently, or kind of going forward, are we just to expect that they're very rarely in on the top 3 free agents unless they filter down the top, maybe not 3, top 5 to 10. Those top guys, are they not in on them at the start of free agency outside of like, here's this generational talent?
Shohei.
Yeah, that we're going to check in on and try to be aggressive for, but really understand that he's going to the Dodgers. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, but like I'm trying to wrap my mind around that, and we need to do more talking to people around the game and within the front office. I want to understand that. Like, was last year when we knew early that don't waste your time digging in. Like, we didn't waste our time trying to figure out if they were going after Corbin Burns or Max Fried or Juan Soto, right? We knew not to waste our time. Is that how it is going forward? I think that's a question I'd like answered at some point over the next few months to really understand what this organization is. And maybe we can't get that answer because it's all dependent on the CBA, right? And maybe that's just the bottom line. I I've kind of derailed the Alex Bregman topic. But that's just where my mind goes, because he is the big, like, it's going to be years and money with Alex Bregman. He's a really good fit. Is this the type of thing they do? Now they have money coming off the books, and they and I don't know what their payroll is supposed to look like. They can fit this in without going crazy. And then you can also add pitching via trade. There are ways to make this work where it's not unreasonable and where we don't have to talk as much about money and payroll. I think he's a really good fit. And if what you're saying holds true in the sense of their projections liked him going forward, if that's still the case, if 1 year of data, I thought it was pretty positive data. He was hurt. How many games did he play? He played 114 games. So that, does that data, what does that data tell them? That, whatever the injury was, I didn't follow the Red Sox enough to know exactly what his injury was. It did say he had a couple, it was a long IL stint. From just looking at the transactions, he went on at the end of May and came back on at the beginning, halfway through July. So that's a decent stint. So those are the questions that I think they need to answer. Like, health wise, did anything change for them health wise, and what type of team are they spending wise? Those are the big things for me when I look at Alex Bregman. But I agree with this. This is like a really good fit in so much of what they're trying to build.
Yeah, I think to wrap up, Bregman in a way that applies to everyone else we talk about on this episode, and the way you began this show, it still feels like it's pitching, and more pitching. Like, we can't just totally ignore the offensive side of the ball, and they're not locked in. I think we've seen that. Like, it is all about their projections and their valuations. So they're not going into this like, oh, we have to get this particular component to our team, a specific component or a specific player. It's like, no, they're going to assess the marketplace, trades and free agents, and see what fits best for them. But that is why kind of the disclaimer for the rest of this episode is like, don't see them going absolutely huge on the position player side, because they're largely set and they have obvious needs on the pitching side. But like you said, you don't really know how the rest of the market's going to shake out.
Yeah, they're largely set, and their youngest players are position players.
Yes.
Their youngest talent. They're on the verge of needing everyday playing time. So there's all these reasons why it makes sense. They could even trade from that and still have plenty of young position players. So it's just it's not number one priority, perhaps. The look, like you said, assess the market, see for ways, any way that you can improve. That's kind of the summation of how we'd look at the offseason going forward. All right, let's take a quick break and talk about two familiar names as potential targets.
Hey, if you want to take care of yourself, your body, and everything that goes into health, fitness, and nutrition, Superpower provides Kratz what I would call the pro experience for the everyday person.
100%. Super easy. You get your lab test results back and you can streamline exactly what you're deficient in. You can say, okay, this is what the results told me. I'm going to go ahead and maybe look for that in a supplement, which they provide. I'm going to go ahead and look at that in my daily workouts, which they give so many different ideas of how to make sure your deficiencies become some of your superpowers.
Superpower used to cost $499. Head to superpower.com right now to learn more and lock in the special $199 price while it lasts. After you sign up, they'll ask you how you heard about them and make sure you mention FT. Your biology decoded, your blueprint activated with Superpower.
Welcome back to Northside Territory, presented by Fox One. Patrick, let's talk about a couple familiar names. Let's just start it off with the guy we've been talking about for 9 months. It seems like maybe a year. They're not going to just let Kyle Tucker walk without engaging in some form. Whether it's a formal offer, whether it's just checking in, seeing how that market develops, keeping in contact, seeing what he's looking for. They're not ignoring the Kyle Tucker market. This isn't like Juan Soto, where they were just like, they weren't going to be in on the piece. So, as much as you and I guess, have both been saying since they traded for him that it felt like a 1-year thing. You can't ignore it. You can I'm happy to admit that I've been wrong before, and I could be we could be wrong here. Maybe something happens and there's a return. They're certainly not going to just dismiss it out of hand.
It's a good point to reference kind of Soto and how he's represented by Boris Corp, which also had Matthew Boyd last offseason. And why I bring that up is that both Kyle Tucker and Kyle Schwarber are represented by XL Sports Management. So obviously during the course of this offseason, Jed and Carter will be talking to various agents and checking in. That's kind of how they operate in general. They always want to have the pulse of the marketplace. They never want to rule anything out. They want to make decisions at the last possible second. And so, the Cubs were not interested in Juan Soto, but Scott Boras had a bunch of kind of pitchers in that sort of sweet spot of like not super long, not super expensive in terms of the overall number, but they could get some really nice AAVs and a little bit of security. And that's how Matthew Boyd wound up with the Cubs. And I think, XL's in a spot here where they have two left-handed hitters who are extremely accomplished, but bring different things and will be in different sort of pricing tiers. And I think both Schwarber and Tucker fall under that category for the Cubs of like definitely checking in, sort of intrigued, but obviously going to set a very firm price point on those negotiations, and it won't be very easy to move off of.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Schwarber is coming off his it's his best season. I'm pretty sure it's his, just a monster offensive season. Really impressive numbers, and kind of became the player. I mean, he's been on this track since he left the Cubs, but he really turned into something fun and special this year. 56 homers, is that right? I mean, that's awesome. And I don't think, having covered him, I could be like much happier for a player that I've covered that left and went on to like become something like everything that we kind of envisioned was possible for him. He fulfilled it. Like he's this great team leader, team spokesman for Philadelphia, and just this otherworldly slugger that is fun to watch, comes up in big moments and delivers. I think there's value to both what he brings on the field and off the field. He'd fit in well as DH. If you're happy, if you're comfortable playing say every day in right field, you could use some of those position player prospects to go get pitching. Like there is a fit here. I think he's 32. I think the cost makes it make less sense if he somehow if it's one of those situations where we're talking about this in February, then he's still out there. That suddenly makes a lot more sense. I don't see that with him. Like he's just I really do think like he's made a name for himself across the league is being too valuable to like kind of let linger out there. Maybe I'm wrong. Alex Bregman lingered out there, and he's certainly valuable in multiple ways. I think it'd be really fun. I'd be all for it, both in like baseball terms and like coverage terms for us. Like it'd be nice to cover him again. He's one of the guys that when I go to Philly or when the Phillies come, I make sure to go say hi to. Like he's just that type of guy. He's fun to be around, and he's like a good talker, and he kind of gets he has good perspective on things, and he's honest too. Like he's not the type that like gives you these answers that you're like, okay, well that was nothing. He's he's always willing to chat. Like there's a lot of value there that maybe the fans don't care about in some of those things, but I think it is fun. And then obviously there's the homer potential that this team is losing. If you're not bringing back Kyle Tucker, they're losing some power. What the jump in strikeouts with Kyle Schwarber, but not. This isn't a team that struck out at a high rate. It struck out at a pretty low rate, so they could probably handle that. It wouldn't be much of a detriment to them, and that power jump would be really important and impactful. I think he'd be fun to bring back, and you're right. Like the Excel connection there, they're going to be in contact with them. Like what can they massage here? What can they make happen? It'll be interesting to follow if there's any whispers of a reunion.
I think fans see what you're talking about, Sahadev. He's just a real person, like a real personality, I should say, of just like what you see is sort of what you get. There's not an ounce of phoniness to Kyle Schwarber. From the Midwest, went to a Big Ten school, very much someone who treats people extremely well behind the scenes and gets along with a lot of different people in the clubhouse. I'm looking up now. I think 2019 might have been the only year of his career he did not make the postseason, which is kind of crazy to think about. A guy who debuted in 2015. Love the fit for our purposes. Still think that if the Phillies want him back, and all indications are that they do, I do not see the Cubs entering a bidding war for that, much less winning a bidding war for a guy who, let's face it, from the front office perspective, is sort of one-dimensional. That's kind of, I'm from their perspective of, yes, I think they recognize all those intangibles. No, I don't think they're going to overpay wildly for that. Look at how this team has been built. It's been a lot of sort of two-way players who bring a lot of defensive value, which does not cost as much as home runs. So, yeah, I think we're going to be covering Schwarber until he returns to the Phillies. I don't know. Maybe there's a mystery team out there. Maybe there's a team that sees the same things and really pays for it. But again, don't see the Cubs locking up a 30-something designated hitter for huge dollars and that many years. It's going to cost more years than you think. I mean, props to the Phillies for getting Schwarber at that time. I mean, we could say obviously the Cubs business department should have given baseball more money so that he was not non-tendered for nothing during the pandemic. I think it's fair to say, should they have signed Schwarber instead of Seiya? Maybe sign both. But at this point, not really holding out hopes for a Schwarber reunion, but I don't know, crazier things have happened, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you talk about how it's going to cost more than you think. I think that's true for everything. Like, I think around this time, uh, we think the prices are, at least this is my trend. What happens with me? I think the prices are going to be a little bit lower, and then we start getting into the offseason, and I'm like, oh, right, there's all the ways these bidding wars, and it goes higher. So, like, even with Kyle Tucker, when I was talking about that, whatever, a few episodes ago, it's probably going to be more than what we speculated at the end of September, because this is just like, people are going to forget. It's not that they forget, it's just that you look at the overall numbers, and that's an elite player. So
Yeah.
you're not going to, like, you just overlook at the time, like, you start getting these bidding wars, and you overlook that he missed a month and a half or whatever, or that there were issues with the calf, and people thought why isn't he playing right now? What's taking so long for him to come back? Two things on Schwarber. I think the clubhouse stuff, him and Nico, that type of attitude, like, he has a very similar mindset to Nico Horner, where it's just like all about winning, and it's very hard nosed. I like that. I think it's really fun to have in a clubhouse, and it's easy to, like, kind of digest and root for. Like, you hear it and you're like, this is genuine. And, like, yeah, how can you not root for someone that cares that much? The other thing is the way he's kept in shape. Like, I don't think anyone would have projected his body type to look the way it does now at what, age 32-ish. He's done a great job. That, like, you gotta give him a ton of props for staying in shape. Not only staying in shape, but looking like better than he did when he was probably with the Cubs. He's in great shape, and I think that probably wasn't the projection for him. So props to him for that. All right, we'll come back and talk about a couple more players that maybe are on the Cubs' radar.
This episode is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. These businesses are what make the neighborhood the neighborhood. You and I are both in Orlando, and I see Square all the time at those awesome farmers markets around town.
And a lot of restaurants in general just have this to where they have the little thing plugged into their phone, and you stick your card in it, and wham, bam, we're out. It's cool. It's a way for local businesses to make money and make it easy on not only them, but also on me, the consumer, because Lord knows I'm not making or selling anything.
No, and it's a tap, or on your phone, you double click.
You can even insert your chip if you want to, swipe it. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's changed the game. You can go to square.com/go/foul to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy that you did. Again, square.com/go/FOUL to learn more. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Get after it, FT fam.
Welcome back to Northside Territory, presented by Fox One. Patrick, we have talked about the Cubs and their connection to the Asian market, Japan in particular. We know Seiya Suzuki and Shota Imanaga have been huge pieces of the Cubs' kind of resurgence here. They've been interested in other players from Japan. We'll see how active they are in the pitching market there. But there are two big bats. Munetaka Murakami, and I got to get this right, Kazuma Okamoto. Those are the two bats.
Well
Probably,
done.
yeah. As far
Your
as
international travel has paid off this year.
Those are the two biggest names as far as position players. I think both have played third. I think we'll see if either plays third in the big leagues. It's kind of like first base DH. Okamoto, I'm not sure what. I think Murakami is more like this guy's first base DH. Okamoto is pretty much first base. I think I've heard some thoughts about maybe he'll play the outfield. Maybe I'm misremembering that or misrepresenting that. But these guys aren't going to be paid for their defense. It sounds like Murakami is more like power oriented, like a ton of power. And Okamoto has a little bit more contact than Murakami. Both interesting. Murakami's 25, I believe, and Okamoto's 29. So that's probably the big gap in cost, which makes me think Okamoto is where they would focus their attention and see if they can get you know, a better deal and fewer years, lesser AAV. That's where my mind goes when thinking about how the Cubs attack things.
Yeah, as we were outlining the show before we started recording, we felt same thing kind of on the pitching side of we have to at least explain this wave of Japanese talent that's coming over, and that the Cubs had already built kind of scouting reports on these guys before Shota Imanaga threw the first pitch of the 2025 season inside the Tokyo Dome. That is how far ahead you have to be involved in this marketplace, and that's years of building relationships and establishing a presence. The Cubs have that. They have a lot of info on these guys, and I think it's important to remember too of like that doesn't mean they're aggressively going after them. It's more of like, okay, they are going to be sort of like in this flow of Japanese players continuously. And I think back to really how Shota landed here, like that sort of fell in their laps. Like they were aware of him, they were intrigued by him, they thought maybe his market would go to a place that didn't make sense for them, but they also had the information in the background to be like, okay, these certain elements within his game have changed, or this is how we could maybe coach up some of these elements. This is how our system would help his individual talents flourish. And like that deal came together more towards the deadline of his posting window. And so that's kind of why we're mentioning these guys now. I'm not saying they're like the number one name on a whiteboard somewhere in the Wrigley office building, but very much aware of these guys, and they're among a small handful of teams that are kind of in play for these guys year after year.
Yeah, I think that latter point that you're making there, like there's just not as much competition in general for Japanese players, just because they end up wanting to play for a select group of teams, and not as many teams are in the market or put in the effort to be in that market. The Cubs have put in a lot of work to be in this market, and they will monitor every situation. Like you said, Imanaga was one of those situations that maybe they weren't the aggressor, but it worked out in their favor. And who knows if one of these bats kind of, okay, we're not paying this exorbitant price that may be what everyone's talking about, but suddenly it gets to a area that makes a lot of sense for them, and they see it as like, this is just incredible value, and we can get creative like they did with Imanaga's deal. Who knows? I think in particular, Okamoto has kind of a skill set that makes sense. Can they coach up? Like the difference would be, do they think they can coach up Murakami's in zone swing and miss? Can they correct that? Are they confident enough in that, or do they think they can like kind of tap into the Okamoto? I think has hit for power in Japan, but do they think that translates? And if they don't, are they confident enough that the contact skills are just so valuable that he can, slug a decent amount and be valuable and hit the ball hard enough at stateside? I'm fascinated to see how these players' skills translate in the U.S. And just curious to see how aggressive the Cubs would be with the position players. I think they're going to get someone, or I think they're going to be active in the market in general, and maybe sign someone that played in Japan last year. It just seems like there's so many players that are options that it makes sense for the Cubs to go that route. We'll see if it's a big name or if it's someone like you mentioned last episode, Foster Griffin. I think that's an interesting pitcher name. I think there's a lot more time here too for us to kind of suss out exactly what they're doing. Like I started with earlier, I'm really curious with how they how they kind of behave financially going forward, and we'll see. Maybe this is kind of like the last offseason where we're kind of talking about that, and it'll be more structured for everyone by the time we're doing this again next year. Well, by the time we're doing this a year from now, we may be in the middle of a lockout, but that's I don't want to bring everyone down. All right, I think those are 5 names. I think you made the best point of the show, and that's this is
You're welcome.
It is pitching, like that's the priority, but they're going to be monitoring this market. They have to. They're losing,
and you even had another name too.
Kind
of on the
I didn't
side,
even.
yeah.
Did I skip? Did we only?
You had mentioned him at the trade deadline, I think, around the trade deadline last year.
Yes. I
As
almost
a fit
ended the show.
profile type, yeah.
Yeah, I almost ended the show before mentioning my guy. No, they look if they depending on how they fill out the rest of their position players, they're going to need a bench bat. They're going to need someone. They did not have some. This was an issue. They tried to address it with Justin Turner. They tried to address it with Willie Castro, someone that could hit lefties. Rob Refsnyder is a veteran. He can play the corner outfield spots. He can step in. He's played other positions in the past. Well, who knows where he can play in 2026? But he crushes lefties. He had a 159 weighted runs created plus against lefties last year. In his career, I believe those numbers are pretty darn good. 129 against lefties for his career. So it's not just like a 1-year wonder thing. Willie Castro was a little bit of a like this. He hadn't always crushed lefties in the past. Justin Turner just wasn't used to the part-time thing as much, and he was 40. He's Refsnyder's 35, or am I right? Yeah, 35, I believe. So he's older, but not, he's still got some time left there and some years left in all likelihood. I think he's a good fit, and just a name that you're right, like a type that kind of fits,
representative of
of what they could be looking for, because they're going to need to fill out the bench. I think Jed Hoyer thought he did a good job with the bench and then learned that, I did not do a good job with the bench. So maybe he's going to look for a little bit more certainty. I wonder if he spends a few million more on the bench, or maybe it's as simple as adding Alex Bregman and not trading Matt Shaw, and that upgrades your bench. So there are ways, but I think bench is something we can't overlook. One other thing quickly that I wonder if they look at catcher at all as an area, because can you expect Carson Kelly to repeat that? Carson Kelly isn't going anywhere. I'm just wondering, like, this is just something that entered my mind while thinking about how at all the positions and how you talked about how they're kind of set. I don't think there's much they can do. I'm not sure what they can do, but do you need to at least look are there opportunities to stabilize the position or upgrade the position or get whatever it may be? I like Miguel Amaya, but obviously injuries really hurt this past season for him. But when he was out there, he was really, really solid. Just something that, to consider. All right. We'll be back next week with more episodes, or no, not next week. We have another episode this week. And I think we're going to try and do a mailbag episode. So we will send out request for that, get some listener interaction. Thanks so much for listening. This is Northside Territory presented by Fox One. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and subscribe to The Athletic, where Patrick and I are on top of all things Cubs. Thanks for listening, everyone. Take care.